We are back and we are joined by Jacob Silverman, a freelance journalist who just came out with this excellent four-part limited series podcast, The Naked Emperor, about FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF. I mean, everybody's a three-letter acronym these days, and crypto generally. Jacob, what's your middle name? I mean, you gotta come up with your own.
I will reveal that my government middle name is Isaac.
Okay,
Straight from the Bible.
JIS here with us.
Yeah,
Tell us a bit about the Naked Emperor.
sure. It's a four-part podcast for CBC. Each episode's about 30 minutes. It's really kind of beginning to end, or at least beginning to now, of the FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried saga, and designed for, no crypto knowledge required, no interest required. Really more about kind of timeless themes of fraud and deceit and greed and hype and celebrity and the ways that manifested within crypto. But it's more sort of a corporate crime story than is necessarily, hey, this is a crypto or tech story.
Yeah, I mean, so like, where does the Sam Bankman-Fried prosecution stand right now? Like, I mean, I think a lot of people have fears that he's going to be singled out as the singular grifter who totally warped what crypto really should have been intended to provide, and so all we need is some substantial or substantive regulation, and then cryptocurrency can survive and thrive. That's my fear. I mean, what's your take on how he kind of stands in the cryptocurrency zeitgeist?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because it's certainly a big deal. He was the most visible face of crypto, I'd say. Ran FTX, which was by some measures the second largest exchange. Binance is the largest in the world, and its CEO CZ is being investigated all over. So, crypto, and then there are all these other companies that have either recently failed, there are plenty before FTX, or that are in trouble and can't seem to follow the law.
Yeah.
So, the industry has widespread problems that kind of precede FTX. FTX really epitomizes some of them, and it was a dramatic highlight. Certainly the fact that SBF could go from kind of industry golden boy, the guy who was going to bring us safe regulation, supposedly, and to villain and kind of arch grifter in the space of a week, that was really shocking to people. So, and that I think is also in the average consumer's mind what they probably think now when they hear crypto. I mean, I talk to people in the industry, and I also talk to regular folks, normies, or people who use so-called retail investors, people who used to own crypto or
Right.
do. And a lot of people are either disillusioned, or they hear crypto and they think scam, or they think, oh, that guy who was in the commercials who's now wearing an ankle monitor and living in his parents' house in Palo Alto. Like, the image problems are very real, but I also think they are translating into people not wanting to come back to the casino table, so to speak. And that had been going on even before FTX. You had these other failures of major companies. You had even one like this guy, Doe Quan, who was arrested in Montenegro last week, I believe. His company was a major failure and kind of kicked off this whole crypto winter. That happened actually about a year ago. That was pre-FTX, and he's only now been arrested in Europe. He was on the run. South Korea and the U.S. both want to extradite him for various financial crimes. So, this is all very much still ongoing. And as much as Sam Bankman-Fried is kind of public enemy number one for people in crypto, especially because he's kind of ruined the party, there are other potential villains to single out. And even just a number of Sam's colleagues have pled guilty. So he's not even the only person at FTX who's facing criminal liability.
Right. I mean, I'm curious about what dominoes fall there. I mean, and you guys, your book's going to be coming out soon, right? Or no? Maybe I'm mixing that up. I'm so sorry. I mixed that up with another announcement, but I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah. Regardless, check out the podcast though. And I'm going to be listening to it a little bit later. Although, like the image of SBF is a little bit disturbing. What you guys have on the cover, it looks a little bit too much like him, a naked cartoon of him. But
Tastefully pixelated.
exactly, exactly. All right, well let's dive into this here because this was a kind of tease. We had Mehdi Hasan on last Friday.
Yeah.
This interview that was going to go down. And it really lived up to expectations fully. This complete demolishment of Matt Taibbi by Mehdi Hasan. And I watched this all the way through twice, actually. One, because it was so satisfying, and two, because I knew we were going to cover it today. And it's just amazing that Matt seemingly came into this interview with very little preparation, except he went like to the Glenn Greenwald 5-minute online school of it's time to attack MSNBC, and that makes me like pure in some way. Except that Mehdi had all of the facts like just out in front of him, ready to go. He really prepared. And I think it seemed like Matt did not. But like, let's start with this first part of this interview, because it honestly, it started off contentious off the bat, and you guys can check it out on Mehdi's YouTube page if you want to see the full thing. But this is one towards the beginning of the interview where Matt Taibbi essentially speaks to Mehdi Hasan and explains why he thinks the Twitter files are so important, and kind of bristles at Mehdi's characterization of his new politics as like a departure from his past work.
Oh, why do you believe these Twitter files are so important, and what should our viewers know about what's in them that they don't know? Just briefly, your top lines.
First of all, I never said anything about woke McCarthyism, so do you want to take that back?
I didn't put that in quotes. I said a so-called woke McCarthyism. Jim Jordan has also talked about that, and that was a line into Jim Jordan. But happy to say that you haven't described it as McCarthyism. You've described it, I think, as a digital censorship complex. Industrial.
I said digital McCarthyism, not woke McCarthyism.
Okay, digital McCarthyism. We can correct that. Yes.
Okay, good. So you started off as I expected with the whole "what happened to you, man" routine. Well done. So yeah, these are, I think the rest of the stories speak for themselves. I don't have to talk about how important or not they are. The audiences are interested in them because of what they show. That there was an organized, systematic structure in place for the FBI and the DHS to talk not just to Twitter and to forward thousands of moderation requests to companies like Twitter, but also to virtually every other social media platform. This is essentially an organized system of quasi-state censorship, and it's alarming. It's a lot more than what we thought was going to be there. And again, people are just looking at what we found. We don't have to make claims about it. They're upset about it because of what they're reading.
Well, not everyone's upset, and you do make claims, so let's talk about that today. And Matt, we're going to disagree a lot today. You've already started with disagreement, so let's start with some agreement. Should the FBI be wasting so much time and taxpayers' money flagging so many tweets to Twitter? In my view, no. Does the FBI have far too cozy a relationship with social media companies? Yes, I agree. But do your files provide evidence of government censorship? I don't think so. Let's just take the very first example you cited in the very first thread, which went mad viral. You wrote, by 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine. One executive would write to another, more to review from the Biden team. The reply would come back, handled. Now, that sounds bad, but aside from the fact that the Biden team was not the government at the time, it turns out that at least 3, maybe 4 of those 5 tweet URLs that you linked to, that they link back to non-consensual nude images of Hunter Biden. Why was it wrong, Matt, for the Biden campaign, not the government at the time, to ask Twitter to enforce its own terms of service against people basically posting revenge porn? Do you understand why people question your credibility on this whole project when you omit such crucial context right from the get-go?
First of all, the reason that's important is because the ordinary person can't just call up Twitter and have something taken off Twitter. If you put something nasty about me on Twitter, I can't just call up Twitter and talk to the government liaison, whose name I won't mention on the air, and say, hey, can you take care of this? And have them take care of that. That doesn't work for the ordinary person. The Biden campaign could do it. Donald Trump could do it. But I can't do it. Can you do it? I don't think so.
You didn't answer my question. Why didn't you tell us what were in the URLs? Because it sounds much worse than it is. When you discover that actually it was simply a violation of Twitter's terms of service, that these were nude, non-consensual images for Hunter Biden, why not mention that? Did you not know? In which case, no. That's kind of incompetent. Or did you know and you were just hiding it from people?
Incompetent?
I mean, if you didn't know, if you put up...
MSNBC. My
Did
God,
you know-
you got 6 consecutive years of just screw-ups on the Russia story.
Well, that was predictable. If we're going to do predictable. Can you answer the question? Did you know what was in the URLs when you posted them? It's a
I knew
simple
what was
question.
in the URLs.
Why didn't you tell us?
I don't need to.
Because it's relevant. You don't think it's relevant that it's a violation of Twitter's terms of service to have nude pictures of Hunter Biden up?
Look, every time they make a request to Twitter, they're doing what you're arguing. They're making the argument that, oh, we're not actually asking. This isn't censoring. This is just the government pointing out that
That's
this or
what the
that.
emails show that you posted. They
Right,
don't demand anything, do they? They say, can you check if this is in line with your terms of service? And those URLs weren't. So I'm wondering why you wouldn't mention that.
First of all, the government, I can't even report that yet. All right. When they're doing this, it's self-evident what they're doing. And I don't have to make claims about what it is. I can just show you what they're doing. Everybody knows.
You didn't, Matt. That's the problem. You didn't show the world that the Biden campaign asked for nude images. You didn't. Other people pointed out what those URLs were. You never did. And that's the problem, Matt. There's a lot of omission.
Tens of thousands of
There's a
things
lot
that I wrote. Am I going to describe every single thing that I published?
That was the first Twitter file and the most viral tweet. Noam Chomsky, who you know and I know
By the
we
way,
like,
which is about a subject you guys screwed up.
said one of the, and we'll come back to that, has said one of the greatest forms of censorship in the media is censorship by omission. You've heard that quote. There's a lot of omission in the Twitter files. A lot you and your colleagues don't tell us. You mentioned in passing, for example, in your very first thread that the Trump White House made requests of Twitter too, i.e. the actual government, not the Biden campaign. But you didn't tell us what those Trump requests were. It took an actual Twitter whistleblower. Well, it took an actual Twitter whistleblower in front of Congress to reveal that Trump once demanded Twitter take down a mean tweet about him from the model Chrissy Teigen. Yet you didn't mention that in any of your Twitter files posts.
Because I didn't have that story. I don't have
Doesn't
it.
that tell you something? That you had the Biden story and not the Trump story, that Elon Musk was giving you one side of the story?
No, you don't understand. First of all, that first batch of files resulted in the firing of Twitter's general counsel. We were looking at something on a very short time frame, but we didn't have it. I went out of my way to report that fact. I was the first person who reported that Donald Trump made requests and had them honored on Twitter.
But you outlined which ones the Biden team did without giving full context, but you didn't outline which ones the Trump. Well, maybe you should ask yourself why it is you didn't have it.
All right. So, I mean, I want to play every second, but it's hard because I want people to go see the full thing. But like, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, right? One is that he talks about how there's this organized systemic structure in place of quasi-state censorship. And we'll get to later parts in the interview where you find out that he conflated a nonprofit with the actual government and mixed up the acronyms. But we will get to that. Like, so when he brings up that example there, Jacob, of if you tweeted something mean about me, I couldn't, regular me, first of all, now he's buddies with Elon Musk, so we probably could, but regular old me couldn't get that taken down. Like, that's true, because you're allowed to criticize people on Twitter under their old terms of service. You couldn't get it taken down, in theory. But the part is that he's conflating is that these were nude photos stolen from Hunter Biden's laptop, revenge porn in a variety of states statutorily, that could have been taken down and clearly did fall under their terms of service. So then you boil the critique down to, okay, so this explosive report from the Hunter Biden angle is really just that powerful people have access to channels at social media companies and other major corporations that other people don't. That's the biggest story, bigger than what he reported on in the 2008 financial collapse, which is what he's claimed. Like, we already know that, dude.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you actually look at the facts and what you can reduce this to, which is that there is a core of something objectionable here, which is, sure, the Biden team, and as Mehdi noted, not the government, had a direct line, it seems, to someone on Twitter. I mean, that is the kind of access that powerful and rich people have and that we should investigate. But they were asking for something that was clearly in violation of the Twitter terms of service. And then I think Taibi is being a little deceptive when he says, like, if you post something mean about me, sure. But if there were, God forbid, if there were some revenge porn or something horrible like that posted about one of us, you could report it through the reporting systems Twitter has. Now, if you want to get into sort of a more complicated argument about or discussion about, are those reporting systems sufficient? They don't compare to what the Biden team had. That's a more nuanced discussion. But people do have some recourse, maybe not a great one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the point, right? It is, in my opinion, a completely marginal critique, and it's really a shallow analysis of like what power dynamics are. Yes, the Biden team has better connections than average Joe or bot farm or not bot farm, but a regular person with an anonymous account to make a report about some kind of violation of terms of service. And so, and then he just keeps returning to, well, you're MSNBC, and I that's the thing that is just so hilarious is like, I think that kind of political analysis from the IDW types is really dated at this point. Like the online left audience that they're trying to appeal to with that kind of deflection. Yeah, like the Bernie people don't like MSNBC, but they're able to make a distinction between Rachel Maddow and Mehdi Hasan,
Sure.
and the value of the analysis. It's just like he was incredibly lazy going into the interview, and that's what's jarring to me.
It's kind of the knee-jerk Greenwaldian reaction,
Yes.
where it's like, even where he does the first, oh, you did the what happened to you thing, which Greenwald does the same thing, where people do say, what happened? You seem to have changed a little bit. And he says, oh, I haven't changed, blah, blah, blah. And so that a lot of the same kind of techniques and even rhetorical tics are playing out here with Taibbi. I think certainly you have to go at the actual discussion and accusations at hand and not, we all work for someone. And sometimes we work for billionaires or larger institutions that make mistakes or that are certainly imperfect. But Mehdi was pretty on his game and pretty sharp, I think, by actually asking substantive questions. And so by just elevating into, oh, you're MSNBC, corporate media, something like that, that doesn't really work for me, especially when on the other side, Taibbi could certainly be accused of working for corporate interests, which are Elon Musk.
Yes, and he really does nail him on that later. But it's just also like the complete credulity that Taibbi has when Mehdi asks him about the discrepancy where he's given the Hunter Biden information, but the Trump stuff is withheld from him. And the only reason we know about it is because of the congressional testimony. We find out that it was the Chrissy Teigen tweet of him calling, it was a pussy ass bitch or something like that Trump had to get taken down from a model. Like, it shows how petty he is. I mean,
the thinnest skin.
And by the way, they obliged that, right? They obliged that, and the congressional testimony showed over and over that they also bent the terms of service to keep him on Twitter despite his multiple violations, because for them, what he can't contend with is that Trump and his tweets being so explosive and controversial and synonymous with the platform was a huge help for the platform, because people would go to see what crazy shit the president was going to tweet on Twitter. And that's
Absolutely.
why they had an incentive to keep him on. It's the exact inverse of what he's contending here.
Yeah, and I think actually when Taibbi in that clip we saw brags that he got the general counsel of Twitter fired, which is odd because he doesn't sort of accuse the guy of any specific malfeasance necessarily. I mean, he is former FBI, so that is worth noting. And again, that's like the classic sort of Twitter file trope here is like, oh, there's a guy from the government, bad stuff is happening. I mean, yeah, if someone goes from FBI general counsel to Twitter, I want to know about that. But think about the fact that Elon Musk didn't even know.
Yeah.
Like that, and Elon Musk is obviously the source, or at least behind the Twitter files and the dissemination of them, and has supported it very publicly. And he didn't even know that his own general counsel had formerly been at the FBI and would be sort of the bogeyman in some of this early Twitter file stuff. Like, that shows a level of kind of negligence that I think also flows down to this whole Twitter files project, knowing that Musk is really the one pulling the strings and that Musk himself is not very competent at times.
Exactly. Let's go to the second part here, where Mehdi Hasan asked Matt Taibbi about his reporting on the Stanford University's election integrity project. And this is like I was reminded of what it was, that cringy Naomi Wolf thing that happened, right?
Oh my goodness, with her book.
Right, where it was called out in real time that the entire premise of her book was essentially a research error.
Yeah, that's a nightmare.
Well, get ready to relive it here, Jacob, because this is what happens when Mehdi Hasan asks him about this element of the Twitter files.
By Jim Jordan. By the way, you said about factual inaccuracies, Matt. Let's talk factual inaccuracies. Stanford. You talk a lot about the Election Integrity Project in the Twitter files, which Stanford and the University of Washington founded to monitor attacks on our elections. And you say some stuff about them that a lot of your critics say is not true, and that affects your credibility. You said the EIP was founded in response to the government dropping its proposal for a disinformation governance. Well, there you are. We're quoting you on screen. It wasn't. It was formed 2 years earlier. You suggest it was government funded, even though during the 2020 election that you're covering, it wasn't. You say they labeled 22 million tweets as misinformation in the run-up to the 2020 vote. They didn't. They flagged 3,000 election misinformation tweets for labeling, so you were only 21,997,000 off. And you also claim the EIP was, let me finish the question, you can come back in. You also claim the EIP was partnered with the government Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, to censor Twitter, but you mix up CISA, CISA, a Homeland Security Agency, with the Center for Internet Security, the CIS, which is a non-profit. In fact, you added an A to CIS. I think people can see it there in brackets to make that false claim. It's just error after error, Matt, on just this one topic.
Error. But the other ones aren't. The 22 million number came from their own report?
Yeah, it came from a report in March. Do you know what the 22 million number is, Matt? Can you tell me? Because we checked. 22 million is the number of tweets about election misinformation that they just mapped. How many tweets were they? The ones they actually flagged to Twitter before the election, 22 million came after the election. It wasn't in the run-up. They flagged 3,000. So you were off by 21,997,000. That's another error.
They've said a lot of things. I stand by my story.
You stand by what? You stand by 22 million were flagged in the run-up to the election, even though that number came in March 2021, which was after the election.
No, this came in their report after the election.
Which was about some total of tweets that they counted on the election. What they flagged to Twitter was 2,980 tweets, I believe. So that's nowhere near 22 million.
Come on.
What? You got something wrong. You got CISA wrong. Why did you add A? Okay, Matt, why did you add A in square brackets? Do you understand why people worry about?
I actually thought that.
And why didn't you fix it? I just checked the tweet before I came on air. It's been 3 weeks since it was flagged to you. Why not fix it? Do you not have editors at the racket?
I didn't realize that until now.
Okay, and what about the date? You got the date wrong when it was founded. You said it was founded in response to the Disinformation Board. That was last year.
Well, because Stamos is saying in the video that we were sort of created to fill the gaps.
No, that's not what you say in the tweet. That's not what you say in the tweet.
SIO was created in 2018.
No. You say, this is what you say, that the EIP was created after the public uproar paused the Disinformation Board. That's wrong. You need to correct that as well, don't you?
After the...
That's what your words. You say, to quote you, after public uproar paused the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board, Stanford created the EIP. That's wrong.
Well, that's what they say. You
don't need sources, Matt. You could check the EIP website. It says it was created in 2020.
Well, that's the date that I just said.
And the Disinformation Board was 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, then that is an error.
Yeah, that's a pretty big error. Look, Jacob, I mean, you do your own writing. But like, you're not trying to say, you're not getting hauled in front of Congress about this, about, I know you're launching your Substack, right? About the writing in your Substack changing the complexion of American democracy. Like, that's the grandiose claims that Taibi's making here. And part of this is like, these IDW guys that all left in Greenwald's open letter when he left The Intercept because his editor wanted him to make some changes, they pretend that they're being censored when in reality they just don't want editors, but they need them because the dude mixed up the CSA with the government agency CISA and then put in brackets, or what's the other acronym? I'm mixing them up myself, but it's not my reporting. Either way, he conflated the two and got it wrong by, as Mehdi said, a figure of 21 million plus.
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like some pedant or journalism traditionalist, but like, because I mean, I have a Substack that I post things on once in a while, but editors and engaging with an institution or some organization can add something to the journalistic process. Sometimes they save you from making horrible mistakes, or they see things you don't. Hopefully, there's a genuine fact-checking process on like a major feature like that. I mean, that what I think this is a reminder of is the questions around the whole production process here, really, of the journalism. Like from the tweet threads, which are basically unreadable, to the sourcing, to how are these edited, all this stuff. And I think another question here is, this reminds me a lot actually of reporting on tech, which I've done for more than a decade. But a lot of these guys in tech think that they've discovered ideas for the first time. That's why Uber is always like reinventing the bus or something like that. But like, so they think all their ideas are purely original. And you see that with Musk sometimes too. They don't read books. They don't really care for sort of existing bodies of knowledge, because that challenges their own mental superiority. And I think that's what some of the IDW people, the Substack people, Greenwald, Taibi, I think they're doing that a bit with internet moderation, content moderation, the study of disinformation, all these sorts of fields that, yes, they do have a lot of bullshit or grifters or, some unsavory connections to government agencies, things like that. Like, they are imperfect, but they are existing areas of study. Like, people have been looking at this stuff, and content moderation is flawed, but probably necessary. And there are people who have been studying it for 10, 15 years who could tell you more about that. And if Taibbi was really doing his due diligence, I think he would have talked to those kinds of people, besides obviously like producing this in a more coherent fact check sort of way.
Yeah.
But you get this sense that they're just channeling this id and this rage at the censorship you were talking about, that that people don't like their ideas, and now it's happening on a national sort of corporate fusion of corporate and government interests, and everyone's being censored.
And to clarify, what Taibbi conflated in his reporting was that, so essentially the EIP recommended around 3,000 tweets that were election misinformation. And then there was also a retroactive study about the 2020 election and in the wake of it, in which there was an analysis of the 22 million figure that he discusses about election misinformation on social media. But there was no action taken on that front. The action was the 3,000 figure. The 22 million was in the analysis. And then he conflates the two and pretends that this is like the censorship on Twitter as being prescribed by the government, in which he also makes an error conflating the nonprofit with the government agency, is censoring in mass. So there's two false premises underlying one of the major elements of his claim that Twitter's so censorious.
And I think, again, like that's what you want an expert to explain to you before you put it in writing. Like, oh, actually, this report says this, whether you're talking with the people who made the report or some outside person. But, I saw also he was going at it with Alex Stamos on Twitter, who is at the Stanford EIP project, and he has his hand in a bunch of things. There's some things I disagree with Stamos about. He was a high-level executive at Facebook, but he's a very respected figure in tech and in this world of kind of information security and privacy and balancing these competing needs. And he knows his stuff. He's not an amateur. So it's kind of like someone who just discovered this field a few months ago, which Taibbi seems to, challenging a professor to a debate or something like that. And similarly, Stamos' business partner, Chris Krebs, who was the head of CISA, the actual government agency, it was famously sort of the one Trump appointee who was fired, who people could feel some sympathy for, because he was considered very competent and nonpartisan at his job and at protecting election infrastructure, and then went on to found this firm with Stamos. So just from a strategic perspective, you're kind of tangling with people who are experts, who are well regarded, who know generally what they're talking about, I think. So, yeah, you have to come more prepared if you're going to challenge their reporting.
Yeah, well said. And let's just play one more final part here before I let you go, Jacob.
Sure.
This part arguably is my favorite part of the entire interview because, as I said earlier, we literally had Murtaza Hussain, who broke this story on yesterday, coincidentally, right before this interview ended up dropping. And The Intercept, Murtaza, and Ryan Grimm jointly reported on how Twitter, under the direction of Elon Musk, is working with Narendra Modi in India to censor critics and help with internet shutdowns, which kind of flies in the face of his posture as a free speech warrior, and that's why he ended up buying Twitter. India is its third largest market. That's a big part of it. But, you know, if Taibi also is trying to protect free speech with his reporting, which is also what he has claimed, you would think that you might want to call out that inconsistency as an objective journalist. That's not what happens here.
I get that you don't want to reveal your sources, you're a journalist, but Barry Weiss has outed him. He's outed himself. What's interesting about Elon Musk is that we checked. You've tweeted over 30 times about Musk since he announced he was going to buy Twitter last April, and not a word of criticism about him in any of those 30 plus tweets. Musk is a billionaire who's been found to have violated labor laws multiple times, including in the past few days. He's attacked labor unions, reportedly fired employees on a whim, slammed the idea of a wealth tax, told his millions of followers to vote Republican last year, and in response to a right-wing coup against Bolivian leftist president Evo Morales, he tweeted, "We'll coup whoever we want." And yet you've been silent on all of that. How did you go, Matt, from being the scourge of Wall Street, the man who called Goldman Sachs the vampire squid, to being unwilling to say anything critical at all about this right-wing reactionary anti-union billionaire?
Hello? Am I still on?
Yes, you're still on. I'm just wondering how come you've never criticized Musk despite all that?
Look, so I like Elon Musk. I met him. This is part of the calculation when you do one of these stories. Are they going to give you information that's going to make you look stupid? Do you think their motives are sincere about doing X or Y? And I didn't. I thought. I mean, I did. I thought his motives were sincere about the Twitter files, and I admired them. I think he did a tremendous public service in opening the files up. But that doesn't mean I have to agree with him about everything. And
I agree with you, but you never disagree with him. You've gone silent. People would say that's access journalism.
No, I haven't reported anything that limits my ability to talk about Elon Musk.
So will you criticize him today for banning journalists, for working with Modi government to shut down speech, for being anti-union? You can go for it. I'll give you as much time as you like. Would you like to criticize Musk now?
No, I don't particularly want to. Look, I didn't criticize him really before, and I think that what the Twitter files are is a step in the right direction.
But it's the same Twitter that he's running right now.
I disagree with him. If you want to ask, I think.
Understood, Matt. Well, I'll ask you a specific one.
No.
It's not in bad faith, Matt. Sorry. You say that Twitter. Hold on. Let me finish my question. You're saying that he's good for Twitter and good for speech. I'm saying he's using Twitter to help one of the most right-wing governments in the world censor speech. I will criticize that. Will you?
I have to look at the story first. I'm not looking at it now.
Hold on. I posted the story 2 weeks ago. You tweeted at me.
I don't watch the Mehdi Hasan show.
You do. Actually, you do, because you tweeted at me saying, invite me on the show and I'll tell you my views. Here you are. What is your view? There it is. There it is. Look. Yeah, and you said, look, we'll read your words. Why don't you invite me on your show to talk about it, since you're so absolutely sure of what I'll say? You're right. I'm not sure. What is your view on Musk working with Modi to censor speech?
That's what you ask him about the particulars about it. But listen, this came up the first time. I think it was Twitter Files number 6, when you said after this was a big one that we had done about the relationship between Twitter, the FBI, and the DHS. And as that story came out, you were giving me a hard time about tweeting through it, I think was the quote. Essentially, you said, so essentially, you're arguing that this information was not in the public interest, that I somehow shouldn't have done this story that I'd worked hard on, because Elon Musk tweeted something? You don't think that story
No, I said he
was
banned journalists. I think hold on, Matt. If you're doing a story about free speech on Twitter and the head of Twitter bans journalists, yeah, I think most people, by the way, Barry Weiss, your partner in crime on that, your colleague, your reporter, sorry for that euphemism, your reporting colleague, she actually did call him out. So it's weird that Barry Weiss had more integrity on that, some might argue, your critics might say, than you did. Look, we're running out of time. You don't want to talk about India, that's fine. You can go away and research it, but you volunteered.
Yeah, I mean, so that was one of my favorites. First of all, that Mehdi Hasan, just a standing ovation. But one of his toughest burns in that situation is saying that Elon Musk, or not Elon Musk, that Barry Weiss has more integrity than Matt Taibbi. Because if you've fallen that far, that's really brutal. But like, just to return to the point of how lazy he was going into this interview. His only rebuttal to that was, I don't watch the Mehdi Hasan show. Like, I don't watch MSNBC. We know you don't like MSNBC. This is the one tactic you have. And then he had nothing. He didn't even prepare enough to know that, like, the exchange that they had to get him on the show was Matt responding to a tweet about that particular story, about Modi's censorship, which is what was the impetus. He didn't even do that level of preparation. He just thought, this was a part of a Twitter spat more broadly. And you'd think that you would do that, but he did not.
Yeah.
And hello to your cat. That is one cute cat.
I'm sorry. My buddy Harry back here does what he wants. So now
Don't
he's
apologize.
in the interview. But, it felt like the kind of thing that Matt Taibbi in some earlier iteration would have made fun of someone for, like this guy had no idea what he was talking about, had very simple evasions. And yet, there's got to be some way he can talk around this stuff without displeasing his incredibly sensitive source, who, of course, is Elon Musk. I mean, we did see that, what was this, a couple months back when some of this stuff started, Barry Weiss had a brief critique, unrelated to the Modi thing, of Elon, and then Elon Musk unfollowed her immediately. I mean, the guy could not be, obviously, more sensitive and easily offended. But more substantively about the actual issue, like this speaks to my journalistic heart a little bit because I've reported on this, not Modi specifically, but I've written for the New Republic and the Washington Post about Twitter in Saudi Arabia, which is a whole mess, and basically Twitter having a lot of its real security and speech problems are not in the U.S. They're overseas. They're in Saudi Arabia, they're in India, and in other countries where Twitter has made alliances with ruling politicians. The Mudge, the sort of nickname of the whistleblower who came forward a few months back, he cited this in testimony before Congress that there are Indian political operatives on the staff at Twitter that were hired intentionally, that there was a Chinese spy possibly working there. We know that there were Saudi spies. So those are actually, I think, the real speech issues, which is you have people being oppressed or arrested or intimidated in other countries because of what they tweet and because Twitter chooses to do nothing, both the old regime under Jack and the new regime under Musk.
Yeah, I mean, and so there really is, I guess there's no difference there except for the fact that Jack wasn't as open in terms of like, Elon acquired the platform to say, I'm going to support free speech in this way. And I just, when he said word for word, I like Elon Musk, that was really all you needed to know. And he couldn't even muster, to your point, Musk is so sensitive. Taibi couldn't even muster, like, if that's true, I vehemently disagree with it because I'm a supporter of free speech. And that makes me think that, and I'm just speculating here, obviously, and there's more than a source-reporter relationship going on here. Because the reporting happened on the Twitter platform. The Twitter files happened on the platform. I think Musk wanted that. And it was a very financially lucrative opportunity for Taibbi, who then says, well, I didn't put it on my Substack, I put it on Twitter. It was a massive advertisement for your Substack. And then you put everything behind the paywall. And so that's the incentive here that's so perverse. And it just, man.
Yeah, he has no incentive to go against Musk in any way at all. I mean, even if he said he's not paid for this stuff, but obviously the financial incentives exist and are there. And we learned just the other day that Twitter has a list of 35 sort of VIP users, among them, of course, Cat Turd, as he should be. But Glenn Greenwald is one of them. I don't know if if Taibbi is, but he has Elon Musk's phone number. What else can you say? Like, he has the inside line here on a website that is very important for his career and getting his work out there.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. So very well done there by Mehdi. And it's a clearly they have a deep relationship there, and Musk and Taibbi. And I encourage everybody to check out the full interview, Mehdi Hasan and Matt Taibbi. But like, I should have put some sort of content warning, because seeing a guy get knocked out rhetorically on television
may
not
feel
safe for
vicarious
work.
embarrassment.
Truly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jacob, thank you for sitting through that with us. You can check out the 4-part podcast on FTX, which is entitled, I'm finding it here in my doc, The Naked Emperor, about Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, crypto generally. I'm going to be giving that a listen over the weekend. Really appreciate it, Jacob. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks. It was fun.
For sure.